You've got a way to take down that Katana.
Yeah, and here we are now finally in team preview. Katana being so prominent or so strong is one of the reasons that some players have to opt to run something like a hidden par fire, for example, on their Venusaur. And yeah, here we have the teams. So for Yuri, it is going to be what we mentioned before: Xerneas, Groudon, Kartana, Incineroar, Venusaur, and Heatran. And on the other side for Justin, we do have that combination that is a little bit less seen in Xerneas and Yveltal, and then his squad is backed up by Incineroar, Kartana, Amoonguss, and Smeargle. So Amoonguss and Smeargle, two Pokemon that really try to draw in a lot of attention from their opponents with the use of Follow Me and Rage Powder. Then Incineroar, of course, Intimidate, always strong, and Fake Out helps both the Yveltal as well as the Xerneas to get their moves off. And then Kartana is just like one of those Pokemon that can deal with a lot of the restricted Pokemon. It is good against Xerneas, good against Groudon, good against Kyogre. So yeah, just a well-round Pokemon for this format.
Exactly, a little zoom in there on the Venusaur that Yuri's going to be rocking out with. Again, it's the little sort of Pokemon mascot we've got going on here at the LATAM International Championships. But interesting enough, looking at those teams, there's no terrain wars either to be fought. So no electric or misty terrain going to be stopping any of the sleep coming out here, potentially from Venusaur, Amoonguss, and Smeargle.
Yes.
But Yuri here going for the Venusaur and Groudon lead. So the sun is going to be jumping out here, nice and sunny, reflecting what we've got here in Brazil. Whereas Incineroar and the Xerneas is the lead for Justin. So both these players going for very classic leads with their team builds.
Yeah, good call and good identification by Yuri that, as you were saying, there's no terrain and there's also no counter weather. So this Groudon and Venusaur combination is pretty uncontested so far in terms of that the Venusaur will be very, very fast and will be able to go for a Sleep Powder right away. Now, Justin, of course, does not want to let that happen instantly, decides to go with that Incineroar as its lead, and yeah, with the Fake Out pressure, Venusaur will think twice about attacking here. But yeah, if Alessio gave the Xerneas too much freedom, of course the Geomancy boost is always threatening. So Alessio might have to take a trade here, maybe wants to or has to just go for an attack, and instead of Xerneas is just switching back.
Yeah, Justin doesn't want his Xerneas to take any potential sleep or damage from that opposing Groudon, and we see his second restricted jumping out here with the Yveltal. The Fake Out is coming out from the Incineroar, going into that Venusaur that did not protect, so if it is holding that Focus Sash, that has now been broken as Precipice Blades comes out from the opposing Groudon. Despite the Intimidate it will have taken by that Incineroar, this is still going to deal a huge amount of damage and picks up the KO. Yveltal very handily flying up in the air, but to lose your Incineroar straight away, you've got no more Intimidate and no more Fake Out.
Yeah, and it's just the Life Orb boost, so no choice band that some players have tried to use in the past to ensure that the Groudon gets the knockout on Incineroar even through the Intimidate. But yeah, this really gives a huge advantage to Alessio in the very first turn. Justin not really doing any damage besides, well, a little bit to the Venusaur and a little bit of Life Orb recoil to the Groudon. And all of that, well, I mean, he got the Xerneas and the Yveltal in the field right now, but the Venusaur is looking still so strong, and yeah, Yuri really in a fantastic position, I would say.
Exactly. If you're Justin, you maybe want to try and get something like a Tailwind up, just so that you've got a little bit of speed on your side. I know it's only the Venusaur on the other side that's got that elusive sort of speed boost thanks to the Chlorophyll ability, but if you're going to fall victim otherwise to all of these Sleep Powders, as long as they do connect. But instead, it's going to be the Sludge Bomb coming out straight into the opposing Xerneas, has not had a Geomancy, does get affected by the Poison as well, so it has to take a huge amount of damage thanks to its special defense not being boosted, and Poison to boot as Knockoff comes out from the opposing Yveltal into that Venusaur.
And that will knock off the Focus Sash, but didn't really matter since that was already broken. But Xerneas will take the opportunity to go for that Geomancy. So yeah, it looks like maybe if Justin can pull that off, he still might have a way to come back into this game.
Exactly, you've got your Xerneas Geomancy up, and that's always a great position to be in, but the problem if you're Justin right now is you have been poisoned by that Sludge Bomb. You are going to be a little bit of a ticking clock, and if Alessio wants to maybe try and stall it out a little bit, he does have that option,
yeah,
but
Precipice Blades does connect,
it connects.
And will just knock out that Xerneas, so it was probably kind of a risk here by Justin, who might have said that, oh, maybe if there's a Sleep Powder or a Precipice Blades coming into the Xerneas, both of those are moves that can miss, and if one of them misses, or if they miss, then maybe my Xerneas can try and put in a comeback. That did not happen, so Justin is now down to his last two Pokemon. Only the Yveltal and the Kartana left for his side, and on the other hand, we have the Xerneas now making an appearance on Alessio's field.
Yeah, if you're Justin right now, Yveltal and Kartana do not want to be facing down against potentially a fire-punching Groudon and just fairy-type moves in general against that Yveltal. And I think Alessio has just come out here sort of really on the offensive powerhouse here, just not going for the sleep powders, not going for the protects, just wants to get as much damage off as possible and try and steamroll through Justin's team, who maybe will be trying to predict a little bit more and will sort of be them tripped over by the fact of overanalyzing what Alessio is going to do. Incineroar's jumping in though, going to get a good Intimidate off against both of Justin's Pokemon. They can't switch out, they can't reset this. As Leaf Blade comes out, goes into that Incineroar, going to do barely any damage as Knockoff comes out once again from Yveltal.
Yeah, Knockoff hitting before the Xerneas, so the Power Herb will be knocked off, but Xerneas is just going straight for a Moonblast, so no Geomancy here and no option for Justin to take advantage of that, but Moonblast will just straight up get the KO on Yveltal. And with Incineroar, you have a perfect Pokemon on the board to deal with Katana. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Alessio will be taking this very first game. And it looks like Justin has to go back to the drawing board and really come up with another way to try and play out this matchup, because it seems like this Venusaur, just from the very beginning, was putting on so much pressure on his team. He didn't really have any way of stopping the sleep. He didn't really have any way of taking away the speed boost from Chlorophyll in the sun. And yeah, Yuri identifying that, just going with the Venusaur lead right away, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the same lead coming out from Yuri in the second one as well.
Exactly, and Justin, I think, really was very in fear of that Venusaur, and he targeted Dan quite a lot, went for the fake out, went for the knockoff as opposed to a tailwind with the Yveltal. And I think that might have then limited his other Pokemon to take a lot of damage from the rest of Alessio's team. As you can see there, Kartana does get KO'd by the opposing Incineroar, and Alessio is going to be taking game one.
Yeah, and in a pretty dominant fashion, Justin really, as we were saying, tried to make that comeback with the Xerneas, but yeah, since Yuri's moves hit and Sludge Bomb and Precipice Blades are just able to knock out the Xerneas easily, there was no way for Justin to try and attempt that. So I think the Yveltal surprisingly did a decent chunk, knocked out the Venusaur and also outsped the Xerneas. And
so some good information there for Justin.
Got rid of the Power Herb, however it didn't really matter in this game, so maybe the Yveltal might just be naturally faster than the Xerneas, so that could be some sort of information that Justin could use in the second battle. However, for the first battle, that was really too much that I think he could have done, really.
Exactly. Maybe he needs to bring one of his more tricksy Pokemon like the Amoonguss or the Smeargle, and with Smeargle it could have any kind of strategy up its sleeve to help out stopping that Venusaur. You could even have something like a Crazy Safeguard on there. You just have no idea what you can do to shut down that Venusaur. But here are the teams once again. Both these players, you can see how focused they are. Like you were mentioning earlier, Marcus, they are at X and 1. Everything is at stake for them here. And if you're Justin, you cannot afford to lose this game, as it's really going to knock you out of the competition.
Exactly, and Yuri, we've talked about this before, currently in the top spot in terms of championship points in Europe. Of course, wants to try and defend that here, but there's a couple of other players from Europe that are trying to really chase him from the throne. Exactly, so he will need to win this game in order to have a shot at staying in the competition. Of course, even if whoever loses this battle still can go over and play maybe for a top 16 finish, but of course the big prizes and everything that will be played out tomorrow and on Sunday, so that is where you want to go. And yeah, I think in Justin's shoes, if he wants to try and prevent that from happening, the Amoonguss or the Smeargle might have to make an appearance, because both of these Pokemon have the ability to just support things a little bit, maybe get off an extra hit here and there. Maybe if you call out a switch, get off the Spore, something like that. That is really what Justin needs here.
Exactly, as we discussed earlier, there's not really any way to stop sleep happening if that's the strategy that either player wants to go for. And I think if you're Justin, you're going to have to really think about how you can deal with that Groudon and Venusaur. Something like the Kartana, if Yuri doesn't leave with his Incineroar, then you won't be intimidated. You could do some powerful Leaf Blade action against that Groudon, and obviously you won't be affected by Sleep Powder. But Alessio has gone for the Groudon and the Venusaur, as Justin has shaken things up, still sticking with Incineroar for that fake out, but has brought that Yveltal. Like you said, it probably did the most work in the previous game.
Yeah, really risky play by Justin, or a risky lead, I should say, with Incineroar and Yveltal, two dark types. If you're up against a team that has Xerneas, usually you really do not want to lead with the Yveltal, because if, say, Alessio led with Incineroar and Xerneas, that would be disastrous. But now, looking against that Venusaur and Groudon, looks like Yveltal actually might be in a fine position to find those hits, and this knockoff doing a lot of damage. And while we're actually seeing a Rock Slide coming out from this ground, however, missing the Evotal.
Yeah, lucky going for that Rock Slide there, because obviously Precipice Blades isn't going to affect that Evotal at all. But, you know, the Rock Slide didn't pay off. He managed to dodge out of the way. But if you're Justin here, you've done some great things with your turn 1. You've broken the Focus Sash on that Venusaur, and you haven't been so scared by it to go for that knockoff straight into that. You've actually gone into the Groudon and started to weaken the damage that it can do. It's taken an Intimidate, and it now no longer has its Life Orb. So it's going to be dealing out a lot less than it was in the previous game.
Yeah, though with the Rock Slide damage, I think this might be some sort of calculation to play around the barrier or something, because I think now Precipice Blades might be enough to get the knockout on the Incineroar, and then Venusaur could go ahead and go for a Sleep Powder into the Evotal, but it avoids. And yeah, this second knockoff should be able to knock out the Venusaur right away, as it does. So now if Groudon doesn't get this hit off, or doesn't KO the Incineroar, then yeah, Justin should be in a really, really good position.
Yeah, like you said, the calculations going for Precipice Blades is much better to take down that Incineroar, and it will be retreating to his trainer. But Alessio also lost his Venusaur there. That Evotal being so nimble, dodging out of a Rock Slide, dodging out of the way of Sleep Powder. This is just the risky play when you have not 100% accurate moves.
Yeah, pretty fortunate turns of events here for Justin. The Evotal is still at full HP, is still well and awake, but now 2 Xerneas hit the field, and now, yeah, this might be one situation where the Evotal really doesn't want to be on the field any longer. However, I think that Alessio would need to set up a turn of Geomancy this time around, because he's facing against an opponent in Xerneas, so he cannot just go for the Moonblast like he did in the previous game, because then the boosted Xerneas would just clean house, as the Venusaur is also gone. So difficult situation here for Alessio to maneuver around, and we are seeing his own Incineroar now make an appearance for that fake out pressure.
Yeah, I think this is a great switch. You're resetting the Intimidate that your Groudon took earlier, and bringing in Intimidate of your own against that opposing Evotal, but most crucially, getting the fake out for the next turn.
The knockoff comes before the Xerneas move, so
gonna take the Power Herb. So if that Xerneas wants to go for the Geomancy, which it does do, it's going to have to take its full 2 turns. And something we've discussed a lot with our 2 games here is about getting that Xerneas boosted up. And like you said, you don't want to go for the Moonblast, you want to also match and go for that Geomancy. Interestingly, Justin doesn't go for it.
Justin doesn't Gleam coming out here for Justin's Xerneas. And now, though, switching in the Incineroar actually means that Alessio can fake out the Xerneas of his opponent, and then Evotal probably cannot KO the Xerneas in one hit here, so Xerneas should be able to get off this Geomancy boost, and I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. Fake out coming out, and yep, so what does Evotal do? Actually, we now get a confirmation that it is a speed type between Evotal and Xerneas, and yeah, fortunately for Justin, he was able to knock off the power beforehand. But now what does this Evotal do? If he doesn't go for something like a Tailwind, I think it might be very difficult for him to contest this Xerneas.
It's going for the foul play. It's going to target into that opposing Xerneas. Isn't enough to pick up the KO. Interesting choice of move there. Maybe he was thinking that the Groudon, or I mean, he couldn't. He had to go for the Geomancy.
He just wanted to get some more damage off on the Xerneas.
It just wasn't enough.
Yeah, but if he has Sucker Punch, for example, on his Evotal, then that should be one way to knock out the Xerneas. So yeah, there's still everything possible for Justin, but yeah, the Xerneas of his opponent is the one with the Geomancy boost, and that is always a scary position to be in.
Exactly, unless there's a Sucker Punch coming out here, this Xerneas, even at that low HP, can be really applying a lot of pressure. But of course, if you're Alessio, you are going to be aware that this is something that Evotal often does like to pack. We haven't seen all 4 moves, I believe, so it could still yet to be revealed. Xerneas going for the Protector. I think that's wise from Alessio, just trying to scout it out, and we do see the Sucker Punch coming out there. As Xerneas on Justin's side does go for a Geomancy of his own. And I think now, if you're Alessio with that Xerneas, you are kind of stuck, because you can't beat the Sucker Punch at this stage. You do have to switch out, and then you lose your boost.
Yeah, so this could either be something like a Flare Blitz trying to push for a burn or a critical hit on the Evotal, or maybe U-turn to get the Intimidate back and get Incineroar back in the next turn, and then get an Intimidate off, and then hope that maybe Xerneas can magically take the Sucker Punch. But Alessio decided to go for that Flare Blitz into the Xerneas though. With the Sun Boost, of course, doing a lot of damage, however, not quite enough to get the knockout, and now I think Justin will be the one in a great position. Sucker Punch threatening the Xerneas, and then Xerneas on Justin's side can just go for a Moonblast, for example, to pick up the KO on Incineroar.
Exactly, and if that Groudon came in the back, that Xerneas would still be able to clean up, and we've seen the foul play as well on that Evotal. So 1-1 once again. We're jumping into a game 3 here, Marcus.
Yeah, well done by Justin, who really identified that, well, my opponent is not going to lead with the Xerneas. Of course, he got a little bit fortunate there, dodging the Sleep Powder as well as the Rock Slide, but he only really got into that position because he made the ballsy play kind of to try and go for the lead with Evotal even though his opponent very well could have led with the Xerneas. So now for the third game, it's a little bit of a, well, psychological mind game. Does Yuri now change it up from the Venusaur in ground, that if the Sleep Powder hits, he's still in a fine position, I think, even against the Evotar. But if it doesn't, then does he really want to risk going for only a 75% is the accuracy, I believe, win, or does he want to instead try to call out the lead of his opponent and maybe use the Xerneas up front?
Very true. Maybe going for Xerneas straight away as opposed to having it in the back. But again, if he does want to stick with his guns and go for that Venusaur Groudon lead, because Justin still struggled a little bit against it. He had to get those fortunate things with the Evotar being nice and nimble and avoiding a lot of attacks. So it does still give him a lot of trouble. And if you're Alessio, you might want to still go for that third lead, but maybe play it slightly differently. We've seen the Fake Out go off twice now into that Venusaur without it protecting. And potentially you might want to burn that Fake Out this time. Keep your Focus Sash intact so that you can still take that damage and get that Sleep Powder off as long as it hits.
Yeah, one other thing now, we also got confirmation about all of 4 of Evotar's moves, and Yuri now knows that this Evotar does not have Tailwind. Instead, it already showed Knock Off, Foul Play, Sucker Punch, and Protect. So there's no threat of Tailwind coming up, so making that, as you were mentioning, that Protect play even more well,
it's less risky.
Yeah, exactly. It's less of a risk because there's no punishment in terms of like Tailwind or so, like just being set up.
Exactly. Justin doesn't really have a way to fully outspeed that Venusaur, and it can just stay super speedy on the field and firing off loads of Sleep Powders. But we're going to be jumping into this game 3. The players are throwing out their Pokemon, and it's going to be the Incineroar Xerneas lead for Justin, whereas Groudon Venusaur is coming out once again for Alessio. So he's really sticking with that core. He loves the 2 Pokemon together. The sun's going to go up, and once again, that Venusaur is going to be able to go for some Sleep Powders or Sludge Bombs. Again, what is it going to do?
Yeah, just like in the very first game, the same leads coming out. And there we saw that Alessio just got the clean knockout on the Incineroar with Precipice Blades. Now I do not know whether that was a first damage roll or not, but it looks like Justin's Incineroar might be a little bit more like maybe faster, more on the offensive side, but not as much invested in the physical defense. So Justin now, also knowing that calculation, might want to play it a little bit differently, not losing the Incineroar on the very first turn.
Venusaur getting its Focus Sash broken once again, and it's going to flinch this turn as Xerneas goes for that Geomancy. It's listening to us. It knows that it's what it needs to get in order to put its trainer in a great position going forward. But you do have to still worry about the Precipice Blades coming out potentially from this Groudon. Obviously, you are getting a special defense boost being the Xerneas, but that's not going to help you on the physical side. And if you get attacked by a Fire-type move boosted in the Sun or the Precipice Blades, that's still really going to hurt. And as we've seen, the Incineroar can also be KO'd, but it does avoid.
Yeah, that's the risk you run when running Precipice Blades. We've seen it 2 years ago, exactly. And just doing barely below half HP on that Xerneas. So maybe Justin has a little bit of an advantage here now, knowing that, okay, another hit from this ground will not knock out my Xerneas most likely. So he could try and focus down this Venusaur now with a Moonblast. And however, of course, Venusaur, being a poison type, resists the fairy type attacks. So yeah, Justin though, after this miss in a solid spot, he could try and swap out the Incineroar maybe and to bring it back in later, but instead decides to just go for some attacks. This might be a Moonblast and Flare Blitz combination, and potentially, if this plays off, he might get 2 clean KOs this turn.
Yeah, no protects coming out from Alessio at all. Xerneas manages to avoid, and like you said there, Marcus, Flare Blitz coming out, going into that Venusaur in the Sun. This is easily going to be able to pick up the KO, and Justin gets 2 KOs in that turn.
Yeah, it looks like that Xerneas is kind of unstoppable now. 2 Pokemon already gone for Yuri, and he probably knows it as well. Has to swap in whatever he has in the back, probably his own Incineroar and Xerneas, as those 4 Pokemon is really what he has used in the past 2 games. But now Justin is the one with a Geomancy boost, and it looks like, well, Yuri didn't have a very clear answer to that Xerneas lead. I mean, Fake Out just came out on the Venusaur turn 1, and I mean, even if that Sleep Powder hit, that would still have been 2 knockouts for Justin, and then maybe Yuri was planning to reverse sweep with his own Xerneas in the back, and that very well might have happened. But yeah, with that miss on the Sleep Powder, now Justin having the very awake Xerneas with a lot of boosts under its belt, and it looks very good for Alessio.
Very true. Alessio here, he can go for the Fake Out and get his own Geomancy up, and then we would just see this beautiful mirror of these 2 Pokemon facing off against each other. It's sort of one of the big traditions we've seen so far in this format. But then you are going to have to play that sort of game of which boosted Xerneas is going to be the faster and which one's going to be able to pick up the KOs. Xerneas on Justin's side does just go straight for the Protect, doesn't want to potentially take any damage if Alessio had gone for something like a Fake Out Moonblast. And the Fake Out did indeed target that slot, so Justin's Incineroar is going to be free to deal out a huge amount of damage if it does go for something like the Flare Blitz in the Sun. and then put Alessio's Xerneas at the same kind of health range as Justin.
Yeah, this should be a Flare Blitz going into the Xerneas. And so we're kind of in a very similar position with 2 boosted Xerneas, about half health, with the exception that Justin has 2 more Pokemon in the back and Yuri does not. So yeah, once again, there still is potential for a comeback, potentially there for Alessio, but at the same time, it's really hard to imagine Justin losing this one.
Exactly. I mean, when you have a boosted Xerneas, there's kind of always a way. But it is, I think, going to come down to whether Justin plays defensively here and Alessio can call it correctly, or if you're Justin, you could just go on the offensive here, deal out some more damage. But as you can see, that Flare Blitz didn't deal over 50% to that Xerneas, so it's not a reliable thing to go. If you wanted to maybe use the Xerneas to target down the Incineroar, you do still need something else to tackle down against that Xerneas.
Yeah, well, it's one of those very dangerous situations where for Justin, he's so much in the lead that he might really be thinking like, oh, how could I even lose this battle? So this might lead to, yeah, exactly, like overthinking the situation, maybe using some unnecessary attacks, trying to absolutely guarantee the victory. And Alessio is definitely a player that he would know when to take a risk or when to go for the Protect, and he decided to go for the Protect. And this should be a Flare Blitz into his opposing Xerneas, and if this works out Yuri's way, then yeah, I mean, if there is a Xerneas, there's always a way for a comeback.
There certainly is. It's no longer Rock Slide, it's a Xerneas that you need. As Incineroar goes for the U-turn on Justin's side, I think this is a great play by him. It doesn't pick up the KO against the opposing Incineroar, does actually proc the berry, but when you have a Xerneas, you can still easily deal with that. But it does mean that Justin's able to bring his Incineroar into the back so that he can use Fake Out again later on.
Yep.
Intimidate's not the big thing, but it is all about the Fake Out, particularly if you can time it for when Alessio's Xerneas is maybe just protected, and it's then unlikely to get the Protect on the next turn.
Yeah, and the Xerneas just protected for Alessio, so even if this Flare Blitz knocked out the Xerneas of Justin, then I would assume that Incineroar just comes back and maybe a Fake Out and Leaf Blade combination would be able to knock out the Xerneas on Alessio's side. So yeah, that's one of those moments where then the potential for a double Protect could come into play. And yeah, I mean, Justin's not out of the woods yet. As you were saying, that U-turn play was very clever. Now resetting the Fake Out, and Xerneas on Alessio's side just protected, so probably has to try and attempt for the double Protect. And yeah, Justin though is still with a healthy Cortana on the field as well, and yeah, still looking to be in a good position. But if his last Pokemon is an Yveltal, Yveltal doesn't really do very well against Xerneas, yeah, or against Incineroar, so it's really on that Cortana's shoulders.
Yeah, going for the double doesn't quite get it, as Incineroar does go for the Fake Out, targeting down into that Xerneas, and I believe anything coming out from the opposing Cortana Lynx will be able to pick that up, but actually targets down the Incineroar.
Yeah, that's the safer play here. Even with the double Protect, there was no way that this Xerneas is able to get the comeback on his own. So knocking out the Incineroar, so all that chip damage that happened before, the Dazzling Gleam, the U-turn, and then the self-inflicted recoil from Flare Blitz from that Incineroar make it so that Cortana's Sacred Sword is just enough to get the knockout. It's a pretty rare sight because usually Cortana always intimidated when facing against that Incineroar, but it does have that move to do a lot of damage back. But yeah, Moonblast not enough to get the KO, and Smart Strike will be able to knock out Alessio's last Pokemon, and so Justin winning this, turning it around, will advance to 3-1, and Alessio